by unusual warm weather, massive wildfires in Texas have ravaged over 500,000 acres, prompting widespread evacuations and road closures. Now, footage showed Greenville fighters driving through wildfires as thick smoke engulfed the area. The Smokehouse Creek fire, now the largest among multiple wildfires in northern Texas, has rapidly expanded since it ignited on Monday afternoon. The Smokehouse Creek fire currently ranks as the 5th largest wildfire in Texas history, surpassing the total area burned by all fires in the state last year.
We're in the tornado zone and fire zone here the last few years. You know, I'd call it climate change and global warming, but I'm not woke. It happens every year about this time.
Wildfires have forced residents to flee their homes and seek shelter. Though not only people but also some of their animals took shelter in a church after the second largest wildfire in Texas history rages across the Panhandle. Now, Texas Governor Greg Abbott has issued a disaster declaration for 60 counties. Evacuation orders are in effect for several communities, including Moore and Potter counties and parts of Roberts County near the Oklahoma border. The wildfire also crossed from Texas into Oklahoma and prompted evacuations there as well. But the firefighting efforts now face additional challenges, with a forecasted cold front exacerbating the dry conditions. Wildfires in 3 South American countries have led to the highest carbon emissions generated in the month of February in 2 decades. Europe's climate monitor, the Copernicus Atmosphere Monitoring Service, has said in Brazil, Venezuela and Bolivia, drought conditions and heat waves have caused an unprecedented number of fires this year. Thereby, the estimated carbon emissions in the countries in February this year have been the highest for the month in 21 years. Now, this comes as the Amazonian state of Roraima in Brazil continues to battle a devastating wave of record wildfires. The peak season for wildfires in the Amazon rainforest usually ranges from September to October. But the unanticipated fires have put indigenous communities living in the state at risk. Drone views showed plumes of smoke billowing from the rainforests, where wildfires have increased by 465% so far this year.
We are suffering the consequence of this change in climate. So we have also started looking for information again, especially the consequence for us as an indigenous population and also for the environment. How are we going to face and what can we do to alleviate this situation?
Wildfires need oxygen, heat and fuel to burn. Oxygen is not a hindrance, and for the latter too, climate change has intensified hot and dry conditions manifold. Experts say dry weather conditions act as a fuel to the fires, as drier vegetation is much more flammable. And with increasing heat waves in the picture, fires spread faster, burn longer and rage more intensely.
These fires are occurring where in areas where we know there's sort of ongoing drought conditions. Some of that's been enhanced by the El Nino condition over the last few months. And then this is the fires are on top, a little bit higher than what we would expect seasonally, reflecting the drier conditions and also these heat wave conditions that have been occurring.
Harmful waste produced by the public is set to surge by 2050. The United Nations Environment Programme has warned in its report that the rise in waste will cause hundreds of billions of dollars in damage through biodiversity loss, adding that it will potentially cause climate change with rise in pollution levels. The UNEP report said unless urgent measures were taken, municipal Municipal solid waste generation is predicted to grow from 2.3 billion tons in 2023 to 3.8 billion tons by 2050. The waste will be largely dominated by fast-growing economies, including in Asia and sub-Saharan Africa, many of whom are still struggling to manage current production levels.
Waste data from 2020 to 2050, what we can see is that the waste being produced in fast-growing economies, a lot of that waste isn't being controlled at all, which means that it's being openly dumped or burned, resulting in significant pollution.
The UNEP report also projected the cost at $640 billion annually by the middle of the century, representing a more than 75% increase compared to 2020. Now, that is when the world produced an estimated 2.1 billion tons of municipal solid waste. And of the total, $443 billion would be externalities, including biodiversity loss, climate-altering gases produced by the breakdown of organic waste, and pollution that contributes to between 400,000 and 1 million deaths per year. Waste prevention measures and improved waste management could reduce those costs, but there are significant barriers to change, such as weak enforcement mechanisms. A treaty to address plastics pollution, which does not biodegrade and can cause serious health impacts, is being negotiated, with a fourth round of talks scheduled for April.
To realize the vision of a zero waste society, we need to redefine what waste is. A lot of what we throw away is, in fact, a valuable resource, and so we have to start rethinking about the design and the delivery of products and services to keep resources in the economy, but also to ask ourselves whether that thing we threw away was necessarily something that we needed before we threw it away.
Titled Beyond an Age of Waste, Turning Rubbish into a Resource, the UNEP Global Waste Management Outlook 2024 has launched at the 6th session of the United Nations Environment Assembly, which is taking place from February 26th to March 1st at the UNEP headquarters in Nairobi in Kenya. The Reserve Bank of India is taking a significant step towards enhancing transparency in the financial sector. In a bid to address the looming threat of climate change, the RBI has called upon lenders to disclose more structured information about their climate-related financial risks. Now, according to the RBI's draft disclosure framework, lenders, including scheduled commercial banks, large urban cooperative banks and all India financial institutions, will be required to disclose detailed information across 4 thematic areas: governance, strategy, risk management, and metrics and targets. Now, this move comes amid growing concerns over the mispricing of assets and misallocation of capital due to inadequate information about climate-related risks. Implementation timelines have been set for various financial entities. Disclosures on metrics and targets will be required from fiscal year 2028 for scheduled commercial banks, all India financial institutions and large NBFCs, and from the fiscal year 2029 for large urban cooperative banks as well. The enhanced disclosure requirements encompass a range of metrics, including absolute gross greenhouse gas emissions, absolute gross financed emissions, and the identification of climate-related physical and transition risks. Additionally, lenders will need to disclose how climate-related considerations are factored into the remuneration of key personnel. Let's now look at other countries around the world battling climate crises. In Morocco, the first snow of the year has finally fallen at a ski resort in Ifrane. It comes amid a persistent drought that has delayed winter precipitation this year. A horse rental operator whose livelihood depends on the snow said that they had been waiting for it for a year now. Severe weather has left a trail of destruction in the U.S. Midwest, including multiple reports of tornadoes. Nearly 24 tornadoes in Illinois, Indiana, Michigan and Ohio have littered roads with fallen trees and branches, shredded homes and barns, and scattered debris across cities. The U.S. National Weather Service has said a strong cold front collided with a record warm air mass to trigger thunderstorms and hail. And in Bolivia, heavy rains have caused intense flooding, destroying several houses. Streets are flooded or covered in mud in western Bolivia, where a river has burst its banks. At least 40 people have died as a result of the ongoing rainy season. Soldiers and rescue volunteers were seen working with heavy machinery in a river in the capital. According to the government, the rainy season in Bolivia has so far affected nearly 10,000 families. In the north of Italy as well, heavy rains have triggered flash floods. Firefighters have brought dozens of stranded people into safety. In Montebello, 7 stranded people were airlifted to safety and 147 other rescue operations were carried out. Authorities had elevated the alert level for potential extreme weather events on Monday, anticipating exceptional rainfall in the days that followed. The spring season is just around the corner and Shanghai's air is suffused with the fragrance of plum blossoms. Famous for its exquisite plum trees, the city's centuries-old Nanxiang Gai Garden has become an explosion of colors with thousands of fresh plum blossoms. Now, we leave you with these vibrant visuals as we come to the end of this segment of Climate Tracker. We'll be back with a lot more global news. Stay tuned.